5 things you didn't know about the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the longest-standing conflicts in history, yet it's often not really understood. Lately, the fight has been mainly about 2 areas: the West Bank, which is about 2,183 square miles, and the Gaza Strip, which is a small region of about 140 square miles. Although these places are small, the issue they represent is much larger and more complicated than the international community acknowledges. As we dive into this topic, we'll reveal 5 important facts about the conflict reaching way back into history. Join us on this journey as we shed light on these lesser-known aspects. Number 1, this is a very old conflict. The beginning of the Israeli-Arab conflict isn't as clear-cut as marking a specific date. It all depends on how you define the start, and there's a lot to consider. Some might say the trouble began on May 14, 1948, when Israel declared itself a country. This declaration immediately sparked a reaction from the Arabs, feeling that they were losing out as the British-Palestinian Mandate ended on that same day. Egypt, with support from Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and Lebanon, quickly invaded the region, in what they described as a bid to establish law and order in the region, but this invasion ended in disaster. What gave an avenue for this confusion was the fact that the United Nations had promised a solution the year before, a plan for 2 separate states, one for the Arabs and one for the Jews. But when this plan fell apart suddenly, it caused confusion, war, and a mass exodus of Palestinians from the region, as the Jews only gained more ground as the conflict ensued. Now that was about 75 years ago from the time of this video, which is a very long time. But in truth, the conflict started even before 1948. This brings us to another agreement that set off conflicts in this region: the Balfour Declaration of 1917. Arthur James Balfour, serving as Britain's foreign secretary, supported the creation of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, and this declaration was ratified by the British government. Yet if we look deeper into history, we'll see that the problem reaches back much further. This piece of land, situated east of the Mediterranean Sea, has been the subject of conquests for many years, with people under the rule of foreign powers for millennia. The Romans conquered and named Palestine. Later, the Ottomans took control in 1517 and ruled until 1917 during the First World War. The complexity of this issue is steeped in centuries of history. This leads us to the second fact about these conflicts. Fact 2. The situation is complicated by international interference. When discussing the conflicts in this region, the spotlight often lands on the Jewish and Arab communities. However, a closer look reveals that international interference might be the bigger trigger for these hostilities. The delicate balance was disrupted during World War I due to the British involvement in the area. At that time, Britain had its eyes on strategic advantages, occupying Egypt while the Turks were in control of Palestine. This led to the McMahon-Hussein Correspondence, a series of official letters promising Arab independence in the Palestinian region in exchange for Arab support against the Ottomans. The plan succeeded, resulting in the Arab overthrow of the Ottoman government and British control. However, the Balfour Agreement of 1917 shifted the dynamics, supplanting previous agreements. Since then, numerous nations in the region have interfered, making an already complicated situation even more convoluted. The United Nations, handed the problem after British rule, has struggled to find a clear solution. Despite extensive meddling, declarations, and treaties, the situation has only worsened, underscoring the complexity of this deeply entrenched issue. Fact 3. No stable borders or boundaries. The shifting boundaries and occupation of disputed territories such as Gaza and the West Bank have been a persistent issue since the mid-20th century, deeply rooted in the Arab-Israeli conflict. The Gaza Strip is one area where there's so much tension. This area was under control of Egypt after the 1948 war, but things changed in 1967. During the Six-Day War, Israel swiftly defeated Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, gaining control over the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. This did not help matters in any way, as victory reshaped the territorial landscape and set the stage for a prolonged and controversial occupation. In 2005, Israel unilaterally withdrew its military forces and dismantled settlements in the Gaza Strip, while maintaining control over its borders and airspace. Subsequently, Hamas, an Islamist political organization, gained control in Gaza after winning legislative elections. This political shift led to a heightened conflict between Hamas and Israel, with recurrent military engagements causing widespread devastation and loss of life. Things were not any better in the West Bank, where the situation remained complex, characterized by a dual administration: the Palestinian Authority governing certain areas and Israel maintaining military control over others. This fragmented governance has resulted in challenges related to economic development, freedom of movement, and access to resources for the Palestinian population. The ongoing occupation and territorial disputes have profoundly affected the lives of those residing in these regions. The population endures daily hardships, limited access to essential services, economic instability, and restricted movement due to the security situation. Fact 4. Bigger than a two-party war. The Israel-Palestine conflict, often perceived as a two-party struggle, is in reality a complex, interwoven situation involving multiple groups with distinct agendas and histories. Beyond the well-known Israeli government and Palestinian Authority, various factions have emerged, reshaping the dynamics of the conflict. In the 1960s, the Palestinian Liberation Organization emerged as a prominent force, seeking self-determination for the Palestinian people and the creation of an independent Palestinian state. This added a new dimension to the already complex situation, spurring tensions between the PLO and Israel. The PLO engaged in various attacks, notably through its military wing, Fatah, targeting Israeli civilians and military installations. The struggle for control over territories like the Gaza Strip and West Bank became a prominent aspect of the conflict during this period. In the mid-1980s, Hamas, an Islamist organization, gained traction, emphasizing Palestinian self-determination and Islamic rule. In the 1990s, dissatisfaction with the Oslo Accords served as fuel for their ascent, highlighting a desire for a more rigid strategy. Around the same period, Palestinian Islamic Jihad emerged as another militant group, rejecting a two-state solution and advocating for armed struggle. Their motivations lie in challenging the Israeli occupation and asserting a united Palestine. Further complexity arose with the Al-Aqsa Intifada in 2000, triggering widespread Palestinian unrest. The Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades, an offshoot of Fatah, the dominant political party, conducted numerous attacks against Israeli targets, signaling growing disillusionment with diplomatic efforts. Among Arab and Muslim groups, Hezbollah in Lebanon has become a key player, supporting Palestinian resistance and contesting Israeli influence in the region. Their involvement introduces an external dimension to the conflict, underscoring regional entanglements. On the Israeli side, there were several groups that seemed to have individual agendas. One prominent Israeli agitation group during this period was the Herut Party, founded by Menachem Begin. This right-wing nationalist party advocated for a greater Israel, emphasizing territorial expansion and asserting Jewish rights over Gaza, the West Bank, and other disputed territories. Simultaneously, the Labor Party, led by figures like Levi Eshkol and Golda Meir, represented a more centrist and pragmatic approach to the conflict. The party sought a negotiated settlement with neighboring countries, promoting stability and coexistence. The ideological differences between these major groups created a landscape of contrasting approaches and vision. Fact 5. No end in sight. Right now, there is no defined end to these clashes between Israel and the Palestinians. One of the problems is the many failed attempts at resolution through various treaties and peace initiatives. The Camp David Accords of 1978, an early attempt to forge peace, faltered due to fundamental disagreements over land allocation and the status of Jerusalem. But the parties couldn't agree on crucial territorial boundaries. Then the Oslo Accords of 1993 also crumbled. While initially promising, this treaty faced challenges due to conflicting interpretations and persistent violence, making it difficult to maintain trust and implement agreed-upon measures. Subsequently, the 1994 Israel-Jordan peace treaty failed too. While formalizing relations, issues like water rights and border management remained sources of tension, inhibiting a comprehensive peace. Along came the 2003 Roadmap for Peace, but the involvement of external factors and shifting international priorities hampered this initiative's progress. Consistent commitment and support were lacking due to geopolitical influences. In 2007, the Annapolis Conference was held. Despite international efforts, deep-rooted historical grievances and a lack of trust prevented this conference from yielding a sustainable solution. These are just a few of the many attempts at resolving the issues causing the constant clashes in the region, but they have all failed. Issues such as Jerusalem's status and land allocation are particularly contentious, even with the Trump administration recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Secondly, the deeply entrenched identities and religious narratives of both parties make compromise challenging. Third, a history of violence and mutual distrust hinders building a genuine commitment to peace. Finally, external influences and geopolitical considerations often overshadow the peace process, leading to wavering support and changing alliances. To achieve lasting peace, acknowledging and addressing these complex and interlinked issues is crucial. Only through genuine understanding, trust building, and sustained international support can a path toward resolution and reconciliation be forged. Taking sides has not yielded any positive results and may not bring the much-needed peace the region desperately needs. If you want a front-row seat to unbiased content like this, hit the subscribe button and watch out for our next video.